I'm proud to announce that the podcast is now officially sponsored by the fine people over at Chop Chili Company. Guys, this is some of the best chili you can get here in the state of New Mexico, and they are online as well as in stores. They can be found at Smith's, Albertsons, Sprouts, John Brooks, and Lowe's Corner Market. They have 3 amazing flavors that you see here, and they also have frozen green chili that you can get online. Go on over to the website, chopchilico.com, and get yourself some amazing chili today. Just let us know whenever we're up. Thank you. All right, we're up. What's up, buddy?
Hey.
It's good to do this again. Because we haven't done one, like one-on-one, in a year or so, right?
I don't fucking know.
Because I think it's been longer than a year. I think the last time we did a one-on-one was when it was like 4.5 hours long. Now that I think about it, because you and Joey did one.
I think the last one-on-one was
at the
Godzilla?
At the condo.
Yeah.
The very first studio. And then, you and Joey did one. That was right before Doctor Strange came out at the second studio. And then we've just been doing like group ones here and there. So I've been looking forward to this. I know our schedule's been kind of fucked, so I've been looking forward. Even though we fucking live together, our schedule's been kind of
Even
fucked.
though we're in the same house, it's impossible to get on the same cycle.
Well, and we also couldn't do it because you were fucking... Congratulations, very late congratulations, but congratulations for finally finishing P school.
Thanks.
And becoming a paramedic. So that's like, so what? Explain to me if anything has changed. Like, what has changed about? Because you used to be a EMS EMT guy.
Yeah.
Now that you've gotten your paramedic stuff done, what's changed?
So, like, as far as the New Mexico scope of practice goes, like, as an EMT, I'm given like 12 medications to fuck with, oxygen and sugar, 2 of them. And then I can do a little bit more than certain areas of the country. Like, we have like supraglottic airways, just like a little bit more advanced, but not a full intubation. It's just kind of like shoving a tube down a throat and saying like, hopefully oxygen gets to the lungs. We're close enough that maybe we occluded the esophagus and whatnot. But a couple other things. Now I just have like a little bit of depression, some sleep problems because of studying, and a shit ton more knowledge than I did before.
I mean, did you get any perks? Like, did your hours get better? Did your pay get better? Like, I'm not just like numbers or anything. But okay,
like,
cool.
by $6.
Okay,
which is pretty dope.
Yeah.
At first, and then I was comparing myself to a lot of other medics, especially the ones that were starting out, and I was like, I fucking hate it here. So like, what sucks, right, is it's like a double whammy. It's like a kick to the balls, because, like, for the company that I work for, and like me working out in Las Vegas, they're starting me at like 19 an hour, which is like at a very low end. Like, those are medics getting hired on like pre-COVID and like way earlier.
Yeah.
Around like that 19 an hour.
Well, and especially when you start looking around like the surrounding states, because I hear your conversations, and I'm like, fuck.
But down here in Albuquerque, they would have started me off at like $21.50.
And that's without a paramedic license?
No, that's with my
paramedic
license.
Okay.
With my paramedic license and my degree on top of that. And then if I would have worked nights and weekends, they're like, oh, you can be up to like making 25 an hour. And I was like, shit, that's pretty sweet. But it's only for like 36 hours compared to where I'm working now. I'm at like 60 to 72. And then I even took it down to just like my regular 48-hour shifts that I work. And I was like, I'm still making more than, or about the same as I would if I was down here. And I work significantly less calls up there. Like, last shift, I did fuck all.
Yeah.
I played Assassin's Creed Odyssey for like a consecutive 12 hours, and then like went to bed, woke up, ran a couple really shitty calls, some ones that confused the fuck out of me, and then went back to playing Assassin's Creed. So that, compared to being on a truck for like 12 hours at a time in like those increments, yeah, fuck that. I'm happy where I'm at. I'm chilling.
Yeah. Well, you're getting all your hours done at once. Mm-hmm. You're not going like a shift job. You just go up there, you exist for a few days, and you come back.
Yeah, it's pretty nice to have anywhere from like 4 to 5 consecutive days off.
Yeah.
Lately, I've been kind of homing myself because I'll work for 4 days straight, and then I'll have 3 days off. But now everything's gonna change. We just hired on a bunch of motherfuckers, and we all looked at our boss pissed. We're like, so our overtime is just gone now? And he's just like, well, you'll still get it because people call up all the time. I'm like, no, fuck you, because now I got to compete with 7 other medics who are trying to pick up this shit. I hate you. You motherfucker.
Do you not get any kind of priority? You've been there for years.
It'll depend. So, like, when it comes for, like, overtime, they prioritize part-timers first because they're not paying them overtime pay. They're just filling in the shifts for them.
Right, yeah.
And then afterwards, it's first come, first serve. It doesn't matter on priority. There are, like, certain times they'll kind of fudge it a little bit. It just depends if, like, you work well with who's going to be on or not. Because there are some people within, like, where we work where you can't be on the same truck as them. Like, it sucks.
Yeah.
It's stressful, especially just to spend 24 hours, like, in the same dwelling as some people.
Is it just because they're fucking idiots, because they're new, because they're just old, cranky people that just kind of check the box and only give a shit?
No, because I'm the old, cranky one, apparently. At 26, apparently I'm the old asshole. No, so, like, we have a bunch of new people, and I was telling my boss, I was like, it's weird because I like teaching people. I like helping people learn. But if I see, like, any sense of kind of, like, if I go down to Barney style and you're still having a hard time trying to get it from me, I start, like, like slowly knife handing, like getting ready to just karate chop the shit out of somebody. Then you have other people, like, I don't know what it is in general about people having a hard time just, like, showering on time when they know they stink. But, you know, you have instances like that. And so that's usually where, like, a lot of, like, the stress comes from. Or,
well, that is shitty.
There's a dude up there that just throws fucking dad jokes left and right, dude. He's like oh my God, dude. He's like a cockeyed pitcher. None of them land. He just, like, out of left field, and it sucks because you're trying to watch TV. And he's just throwing these dad jokes, and you're like, I'm trying to watch The Big Bang Theory, and I swear to God, I'm going to run my fucking head.
Man, when your humor is worse than The Big Bang Theory, you're on a bad track.
Yeah.
Oi.
Oh, yeah. And there's other people who are like, sometimes they're funny. I'm like, don't humor him, because then he thinks it's okay, and then it just keeps going.
Don't enable him. Well, yeah, because obviously I don't mind having, like, you guys as roommates, because we've known each other for over a decade, right? That's not an issue at all. But having, like, professional roommates, no. I could not do that. I don't think I could do that. That's not right.
Dude, and it's rough because, like, my partner, she gets pissed up there because, like, we have, like, our chores. Clean the bathroom, do the trash, clean the dishes. There's motherfuckers that just leave their dirty dishes in the sink. She's on a fucking rampage. And for years, I was like, this is why I ate out the whole time, because I could just throw my dishes in the fucking trash, and it didn't matter. But, you know, now that we started cooking a whole lot, we got to be responsible about our dishes, putting them away, making sure that we're not leaving a mess for the next crew. But there's motherfuckers that'll leave, like, dirty-ass bowls in there. There's Tupperware in the fridge that's, like,
it's like growing mold. There's got cultures going on. It's a science experiment.
I pulled out, like, one of those things of pasta. It was hairier than my damn chest, and I almost threw up. I was, like, running outside and just, like, Molotov cocktailed that shit out. I was, like, ready to throw up. It was disgusting.
Well, and Las Vegas is a tiny little place. I've been there twice, I think.
Once by accident?
No, no, I've been there only once. Just kidding. I went there once because I had court up there. Yeah, because me and Joey got pulled over when we were driving up to Briscoe's one time. Yeah, and the cop pulled us. Oh, God, that's such a weird interaction because the stater pulled us over. This guy couldn't have been older than 25, right? This is maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Really young cop. And he pulls us over, and, you know, we're not trying to have any trouble. We have our hands where you can see him. We're being still, you know what I mean? And he comes over, he lights the registration. I hand it to him. I go, hey, officer, I just want to let you know for your safety.
And hopefully for mine.
Yeah, we have a lot of guns in this car because we're going to Raton to shoot. So it's like, hey, we've got one handgun in each door. We've got like 4 rifles in the trunk and a shotgun in the back seat. And I'm just letting you know where they're at. They're all legal. They're all registered. You know, just letting you know where they're at. And he goes, well, I mean, you're not going to shoot me with them, are you? And I was like, I wanted to make a joke But I was like, okay, I'll get shot. No, that wasn't the plan, officer. Fuck.
Yeah, I got pulled over one time, and the cop goes, and I knew the officer that pulled me over, and he goes, "Any guns in the car?" And I looked him dead in the eyes, and I was like, "Do I say yes?" And he paused, and he goes, "Seriously, do you have any guns in the car?" I was like, "Yeah, I do." And he goes, "Are you planning on shooting me?" And I was like, "No, but I'm going to say a joke when I see you later on shift." Because I saw his body cam was on, and he was like, "Are you going to shoot?" I was like, "No, just..." And I said his name, and I was like, "Just please go give me my ticket." He goes, "This is a warning, get to work." And I was like, "Okay."
And I don't know how real this is now because years have gone by. But back when I worked at the diner in like 2017, we had a regular come in, and she was an APD officer. And she was telling me that the number one cause of gun theft in at least Albuquerque, not the state, but Albuquerque, is people leaving their guns in their car overnight.
Yeah.
The cars get stolen. And, oh, that happened to you.
Yeah, I got my Canic stolen out of my truck. What, partially it was my fault because I fucked up and left my truck unlocked. Oof. Because I didn't close the door. Probably I didn't hear. I don't know. I fucked up. And so my Canic got stolen out, and I was shamming out of work, and me, David, and Joey were about to go snowboarding, and I went in and I was like, "Where's my Canic?" So we called, and we had to wait like 2 hours for APD to come in.
Where's this at?
Yeah, this was here.
Oh my God. Right? 2 hours?
Well, we waited an hour, and I told him, I was like, "I'll call you guys later." I was like, "You guys, this is low priority for you fucks, and I know you don't give a shit." So now there's just a Canic rolling around. Somebody has it, and they got a little red dot on it and a full fucking MAGA hollow point nines. So good for them, I guess.
Yeah, and Joey, he brought up a good point maybe a week ago or so. Because we had that fucking idiot wandering around.
Yeah.
And that's why I make sure all my shit's out of my car now. Because the last thing I need is that idiot coming around with the little ghetto ninja stars, busting out my window, taking all my shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I know APD's never going to catch them.
Yeah.
I mean, the only reason we're going to get in those cameras is just to get insurance purposes.
Yeah. I mean, the nice part is I have like those, like a little lockbox in my truck. And so at least that kind of holds it a little bit unless he comes by with a pry bar.
You can take it out of your car, right?
Huh?
No,
it's my whole my
Oh,
seat.
your center console. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So if you try to take that whole thing out, it would be... Hopefully I would wake up, but I doubt it. But yeah, it sucks, especially knowing that there is a firearm with my name attached to it somewhere, and some idiot has it, and then every now and then around the neighborhood I hear a bang, and I'm like, fuck.
You mean every night?
Yeah,
every single night.
Well, and it's worse, especially in this neighborhood, right? Because like the 4th of July is not just a day. And
4th of July is coming up.
Yeah, fuck. So I don't know if you were here last year around the 4th of July. I think you came in around like
I came into August.
Yeah, so our neighbors and the surrounding area will literally be popping off mortars at like 4:30 in the morning. And it sucks, dude. It's like the worst time of year around here because these motherfuckers will just keep popping off fireworks. Like the 4th of July, loud, cool, fine. And I feel like there's like a general rule of, around midnight we try to tone it down. Nope. These motherfuckers don't give a shit. I remember one time I had to work the day after 4th of July because I picked up an overtime. I'm leaving. As I'm walking out to my truck at 6 a.m., I hear a mortar go off.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck?
You guys aren't even from here. Stop it. Well, because I was here for fucking New Year's Eve. And, God, because you were on shift. Joey was off at a New Year's Eve party. We were the only ones here. We're hanging out. We're minding our own business doing New Year's Eve. And I'm building my Legos, minding my own business, and all the power goes out. Because some fucking idiot shut out the power line.
Yeah, shut out the transformer out front.
Yeah. So I can't wait to get out of this fucking neighborhood.
Oh, dude.
I cannot fucking wait. I've been saving a question for you to do this podcast so we can just like deep dive into as much as we can. Fentanyl obviously has been in the news like the last 5 years, 6 years, and it's only getting worse and worse and worse. I'm ignorant. I just know that it's a drug. I don't know what it does to you. I don't know what kind of compound it is. I don't know how it reacts in the body. All I know is that I see billboards and I see infomercials online, and I see all these things that are saying, you know, a dosage of fentanyl smaller than a penny can kill you. And so then, like, for instance, like a month ago or so, I go in for surgery. I get out of surgery, and I'm in fucking excruciating pain. They ask me, "Are you in pain?" And I've still got the fucking breathing tube down my throat. So I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm in pain." So they like, "Okay, we're gonna give you fentanyl." Now, I'd imagine the fentanyl that they give you at a hospital setting is like diluted and minuscule amounts and stuff like that. Let's start with, like, what is fentanyl as a drug? Like, what is it?
So it's an opiate. It's just a synthetic opiate. So you obviously...
This is making me want to poop.
In medicine, we have, you know, like a baseline or like a prototype drug for everything. So when it comes to opiates and like drugs like that, our prototype is morphine. Morphine's like the baseline for how we judge every other drug as far as like strength and shit like that, right? So then you have, you know, like...
Okay, so what's stronger, fentanyl or heroin?
Fentanyl, by far, compared to heroin.
So it would go like morphine, heroin, fentanyl.
As far as just pharmaceutical goes, like heroin out of the equation, fentanyl is 10 times stronger than morphine.
Okay.
So if I was to give you the same dose of morphine, like let's say a milligram of morphine compared to a milligram of fentanyl, that's a fuck ton.
Okay.
So like our vials of morphine are like 10 milligrams, and our vials of fentanyl are 100 micrograms. So there's a notable difference. And usually, like, for morphine, I'll tag people a little bit on that lower end, kind of like around like 2 milligrams. It really does depend for pain wise, or like I'll stretch out 10 milligrams over an extensive period of time, depending on how long my transport is. But for fentanyl, usually I can, like older ladies, I can hit them with like a little 25 micrograms and it'll be enough to kind of help move them. There has been times I've been a little bit more generous with the doses, especially like on hip fractures on old ladies, because they're, you know, in excruciating pain. But the difference is people in my career field and like medicine as a whole, hopefully, are dosing appropriately. You have to take a lot into account. Age is one of the things. Weight is another deal, you know, because that can play a huge effect in overall size. You have these huge motherfuckers and they just, you know, might require a little bit more of the drug than, you know, 90-pound Meemaw.
Yeah.
For the same injury, right? Well, so you got to take that into account. But what's happening on the streets, especially what's killing a lot of people, is they're getting fentanyl in the pill form. And then they're crushing it up, forming it into a powder, and then that's usually how it gets transported out there.
And it gets like recapsuled into like MDMA or something.
Sometimes.
Okay.
It really depends, because, you know, like with shit like ecstasy, they cut it with different drugs. So like they have different colors. And usually it's like, oh, this one is cut with like cocaine, meth, blah, 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 whatever the fuck they so choose. I don't know everything that ecstasy's ever been cut with, but I know it's cut with different shit. MDMA is more of the pure form of what ecstasy is. It's like I think I heard it say like sassafras one time or whatever the fuck, but it's more of the pure form. It's not cut, supposed to not be cut with anything. But this is also New Mexico, so we'll give that the benefit of the doubt. But
keep going. I'm just gonna put the banner up.
All right. I had a guy who did fent, and then he said that what he did was he had crushed it up, put it in a little foil packet, and smoked it. And I was like, look, man, I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. Do drugs if you want to do drugs. Don't do drugs is my recommendation, especially
smoked
shit like
fentanyl.
this. Smoked it.
Jesus.
And I told him, this pill that you have has the dose because it's meant for you to take it orally, it to get dissolved and processed through your liver, and then only so much goes to where it needs to be. When you change that and then you light it on fire and change its chemical composition, and then you inhale 100% of the full dose as opposed to what your body is processed and metabolized, that's why you're getting knocked the fuck out, and that's why these people are overdosing.
It's going straight to the bloodstream.
Is because they're just flooding their system with more than what that little thing is occurred. There's also been a thing about transdermal, like people touching fentanyl.
I've heard that's a myth.
It is.
That if you touch, like, that was the literature that came out for a while, where it was like if you touch fentanyl, you'll get like a little contact high just from it getting into your skin, but that's not true.
Yeah. So I've gotten like liquid fentanyl on my hands on accident because I'm a fucking idiot and I didn't have gloves on at the time, and nothing has happened. There's obviously like that scare and that anxiety, and everybody comes running in. I touched fentanyl. You're usually fine, but the gloves now are like all about fentanyl protection because the literature did have that transdermal part of it.
All right, stupid question about touching fentanyl. Let's say, because I'm an idiot and I don't take care of my fucking hangnails. Let's say I touched fentanyl and I got into like an open thing, like a little open.
If you had
thing
an
like
opening,
then
yeah. So
okay.
Usually, like one of the bigger things is if you have any open cuts on your hands, like that's an open vector for not only disease but other shit to make its way in. So like if you have a perfectly intact hand and let's say I touched dried blood, in theory, right, if nothing was broken, no skin was damaged, I'm fine. Even if that was AIDS or hepatitis blood. Obviously, don't touch. If it's wet and not yours, don't touch it. That's like the general rule. Please, for the love of Christ. It doesn't have to be blood, anything that's wet. Just don't touch it.
We only give the best medical advice here. If it's wet and not yours, don't touch it.
Oh, my God. So, but, like different pathogens as far as like outside of the body survive for different lengths of time. Like Hep C, I think outside of the body is like 21 days. Hep B might be a little bit shorter. I am pretty sure, if I remember correctly from what I was reading, is AIDS dies almost immediately when it's exposed to air.
Yeah, you were telling me that.
Yeah, like in theory, like somebody with AIDS could stab themselves and then stab you and you should be fine. And
aside from getting stabbed.
aside from getting stabbed, that'd probably be a whole nother problem. But like with fentanyl, it doesn't absorb right away. It doesn't go like straight into your skin. It's usually people who like get it on their skin and then like they rub their eyes. Now they've made it in contact with the mucosal membrane, which will then allow it to absorb. But there's been a lot of like, and there's one video that I saw where this cop had opened up a bag of powder that he didn't know what it was, and it poofed in his face when he opened it up and inhaled. That's what fucked him up, and his partner had to Narcan him. So that's usually what's kicking people's asses. Is it's the powder itself that it's getting disturbed up in the air, and they're inhaling it, and then that's killing them. But they're like, oh, well, they touched it. So that's where the literature kind of went for a little bit until it took time to look into it more. But fentanyl is, the way I see this whole fentanyl kind of epidemic is it's the same thing as like the OxyContin, like the late 90s, early 2000s.
Cool. It's in the opiate family.
Yeah. So
okay. Well, before we get into that, because I do want to hear your thoughts on that. Fentanyl gets into your body. Oh, well, okay. An opiate gets into your body. What is it doing to you?
So
and then what is it? And then like break it down to fentanyl. Like what is this doing to you?
So inside of your body, like with opiates, I could be butchering this because I haven't read my shit in a while, but you have like your MU and your kappa receptors, and that's usually what they act on. In turn, it starts to block just any feelings of pain. It starts to block those neurons from receiving the transmission of pain, or at least slow it.
Okay, because when they hit me with that fentanyl, dude, it was instant.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I'm in pain. So, okay, we're going to give you 100 micrograms of fentanyl. And she put it in my IV. Almost instantly, my pain went away. Yeah. And I was like, oh, thank God. And so I was swimming. I was so happy. I was so fucking happy.
Yeah, you get like that sense of euphoria and like just generally like those good feelings. It does, it causes a lot of changes in your brain. However, it is a CNS depressant, which basically is why...
What does CNS stand for?
Central nervous system.
Oh, okay.
It essentially leads to, that reduction in breathing. So like for us, like our protocols on like Narcan is if their respirations are like less than 12, right? 12 per minute. If they're less than that, yeah, Narcan them. Because there's been times where I've had people who are overdosed, passed out, but they're breathing fine. And sometimes the risks outweigh the benefit of giving, Narcan. Because if I push it too fast, I can The literature on this is back and forth, but it's called flash pulmonary edema. And it's essentially if you tag somebody too fast, they come out of it really quick and their lungs can essentially fill up with blood because they went from such a low blood pressure to high spiked, and then all that blood had nowhere to go. It shoots into their lungs. There's literature that argues both sides of it, saying, EMS or medical in general can cause that. The other is like, well, it's a lot of pre-existing things. Maybe they aspirated prior. Maybe, it had to do with this issue going forth because the rate in which it happens at the rate in which, Narcan is pushed fast is so low, it's hard to say that it's exactly what's causing it. But it's still something you want to be cautious for. But I fucked up one time and I gave somebody Narcan a little bit too quick. They woke up and hurled everywhere, like living dead. Came straight up, zombie, everywhere. I had to clean up so much fucking vomit. It was gross. So it is something to be careful about. But anyways, so that's usually what it can lead to. That depression in your central nervous system, lower heart rate, lower blood pressure, and that's essentially what leads to you dying. Is your heart rate can get too low and your respiration rate can get too low that you're not oxygenating, you're not perfusing. Your MAP, your mean arterial pressure, gets so low that you're not perfusing your organs appropriately, and if that doesn't get corrected in time, dead. So that's why I am a firm believer in like appropriate Narcan education, especially for the general public, because it is a simple reversal agent. Like we have benzodiazepines, which I can't remember the full name. I know it starts with an F, but I can't remember the name because I'll fuck it up. Flamazanil or something like that. It's the reversal agent for benzos, but we don't have it in the field because if we dose that properly or don't really catch it in the right time, we can fuck somebody up pretty severely.
Meaning? There's a lot of the same things you just listed, or?
I can't remember exactly. I know it's a little bit more life-threatening if it's fucked up.
Okay.
But I can't remember exactly. Because it's one of those things. They're like, it exists. You don't have to deal with it. So fuck off. And I'm like, okay.
So a lethal amount of fentanyl enters the body. Person begins to overdose. How much time do you have between them overdosing and Narcan before it becomes fatal? Generally speaking.
So from the time of complete respiratory arrest, meaning they're not breathing anymore, you have about 4 minutes until brain tissue starts to die.
And why is the brain tissue dying?
Because it's not getting oxygen.
Okay.
And so at that point, once your brain tissue starts to die, you start to suffer from what's known as an anoxic brain injury, which, have people like after they've had heart attacks, depending on how long they come out and they're not the same, or, think of like a stroke, right? An area of the brain has not been perfused with blood for an extended period of time, so that's why they have deficits. They may have hard time remembering, hard time talking, hard time doing a lot of shit, and that's what
straight up just brain damage is being caused.
Just brain damage overall,
right.
And this applies to more than just fentanyl. It's our when we're working a code, when any time that somebody is not breathing right, you got to correct it with oxygen. You got to correct their ventilation overall. So from the time. And usually it depends on how you give Narcan, right? We have IV, IM, intranasal. So, like, if you give it intranasal, it takes a little bit of time to work, a little bit longer than it would if it was IV. IM can be anywhere, like, up to 5 minutes, just depending on how long it takes for it to finally start affecting and blocking the receptors. Because all Narcan does is, so, like, here's all your drug and here's your receptor. All it does is it just kind of covers it and makes sure that drug can't get on it.
It latches onto the compound.
Yeah, okay. And usually by that time, the drug starts to die. Its half-life, takes into effect. The drug starts to deteriorate and diminish in the system. The half-life of Narcan is a little bit less, or I think maybe a lot less than what most of the drugs are. But usually by that time, the peak effects have already subsided. Because when we catch them in that overdose period, that's about the time of peak effect, where they're at the top of like the highest effective drugs, or at least near around that area, and then we block it. And usually we block it long enough to where when that effect of the drug starts coming back down, the the Narcan dies off, they'll start to feel a little high again, a little woozy and whatnot, but it's not life-threatening, usually. Sometimes people have taken, like, fuck you doses of heroin. There's a stronger drug, Dilaudid. That's a good one. If you're in pain and you get Dilaudid, good. But there's some people that can get a prescription and they fuck around with that shit. And you have to, like... Because usually the dose is, about 2 milligrams of Narcan. Like, if you're doing intranasal, we do in, like, 0.4 milligram increments, like, for IV-IM. For synthetics, because they're a lot stronger than heroin, you have to kind of play in those higher doses. And I don't know what the fuck the cops are on lately, but they carry a shit ton of Narcan on them. And we rolled up on scene one time, and they're like, yeah, we gave, like, 4 of these, because they're intranasal ones that are given are 4 milligrams. 16 milligrams of fucking Narcan, and this dude was still out, and you're like, what the fuck?
Well, and that's why I bring this up, because when my buddy passed away like a month and a half ago, that's what he died from.
Fentanyl?
Yeah. It was, I believe, it was oxy cut with fentanyl. So it sounds like that the point of no return mostly has to do with brain damage.
Yeah.
Okay.
So... And also, it is an extent of how long you haven't been breathing, especially once the heart stops. It is a tricky situation once the heart stops because, like, a code drug that we give and that's very popular is epinephrine, right? So cardiac epi is 1 in 10,000. That's just kind of like its concentration. So, like, if you're having an allergic reaction, we give you 1 to 1,000, 0.3 milligrams IM. And it'll usually help stop a lot of shit. But since we're going IV... we want to make sure that dose is a little bit more spread out, or that concentration is a little bit wider, because we're giving you a lot of a sympathetic drug to try to get that heart going again. And one common thing that you always hear in EMS is you can give enough epi to a rock and you can cause a rock to have a heartbeat. If you gave enough epi to this table right now, this table would beat. There's been sometimes like post-code where people are like, oh my God, they have a heartbeat. And you're like, no, that's just because we gave them a fuck ton of epi because we've been running this for way too long. And usually it'll subside after like a minute or two once the drug kind of starts to wear its way through. And that's why like compressions are very important of actually like causing the heart to contract and then hopefully making it beat intrinsically afterwards. So when these people go down, they're in respiratory arrest. If respiratory arrest starts first, there's a very finite amount of time until the heart is completely stopped. It's usually very fucking quick, or they're usually right on top of one another. So once the heart stops, blood's not going anywhere. There's no oxygen. They start to build up lactic acid. Just the body starts to become its own very toxic environment. Well, the hard part is when you show up, if you don't have the right information to know that opiates were a problem, you can be giving epi to this motherfucker the whole time, but now you're competing against a drug that's unknown in the system that could cause problems. Usually you got to look for your clues, your pinpoint pupils, depending on where they're at. A lot of times it's not like the appropriate way to say it, but you do have to look at kind of almost stereotyping some people. Like, does this look like a person who would be using some sort of opiate?
No, yeah, for real.
With everything in conjunction, because then at that point, I'll probably just give them a test dose of Narcan, and at that point, it sounds bad, but they're dead. So I'm going to give them the full 2 milligrams IV because I can correct a lot of other things. I can, handle a lot of other shit. So you're trying to play catch up, and that's what sucks is by the time that we already get on scene for a lot of this, for like the more severe cases, we're already so far behind that we're playing catch up just to save the brain. And, I mean, sometimes, especially one thing that I'm very thankful for is there's a lot of Narcan education that's gone around. So especially in the area in which I work, you'll have like people randomly, and this has kind of been one of the backlashes, or like one of the things that has upset me a little bit is you'll have like their friends who catch them like ODing, they'll tag them with Narcan and leave, or like they'll call 911 and fuck off. Because obviously they don't want to get in trouble for
having drugs.
There was a situation involving a gentleman that I did know and his significant other. who it led to an overdose, and that was a whole situation. And we couldn't come back from it. We had did everything that we could, but it's just from time until they're found. Sometimes they're alone, and it takes somebody coming home because they didn't get a phone call or a text on time, and they think something's up. And that shit. It is a very hard thing, because I'm not shaming people that fuck around with that shit.
No, there's a reality to it
Yeah.
though. Like you play really stupid games, you're gonna win stupid prizes.
Yeah, and like my biggest thing is, one, don't change the chemical composition of anything that you're intending to take, because it was packaged that way and is very for like a specific manner. And two, if you're gonna buy drugs on the street, I understand how tolerance works. Like an alcoholic can start off by drinking 3 beers a day and be fine and maintain, but eventually they work themselves up to where like a fifth of vodka, and it's like the shitty plastic bottles is how they have to get through the day, and they're literally sweating vodka. Or, people on cocaine, any sort of drug that is heavily addictive, even nicotine. I've tried quitting a bajillion times. I quit fucking 3 months before this, and now look at me like a fucking douchebag. Addiction's a hard thing, but the difference is there are shit that's like immediately life threatening, such as fentanyl, such as more of the harder drugs that are fucked with, and then there's like the longer lasting killings, such as like alcohol, tobacco, shit like that. Stuff that can fuck you up a little bit later down the line, smoking and whatnot. So it sounds cheesy, but it's all about like the moderation of, if you are going to play with anything, to do so, but also make sure wherever you are getting stuff from, it's not somebody you don't know. Like, you have to kind of know the product. And that's been one thing that I've seen, especially by a lot of people in the ass, because there was a guy I had grown up wrestling with, and I found out around 2020, I think. I can't remember exactly. Maybe 2021. He was clean for a while, and whatever situation led to him using fentanyl, he died. He OD'd and died. It did hit a lot of us, especially because a lot of the people that I knew that knew him were also paramedics and EMTs. So there was a lot of guilt, like, if we were around him at that time, maybe we could have done something different. But the reality of this situation is, when it comes to anything synthetic, it has a way higher potential of fucking people up, especially when you're not ready for it. I've had people who have used heroin for years, and then they get this little dose of fentanyl, and they're like, "Oh man, it can't be that bad," and they OD. And I met one lady. She did like 4 grams of heroin a day, and then she was,
oh my god,
each day she was cherry chingon. She was all fucking good to go, and then she used like a little pill of fentanyl, and it knocked her the fuck down, and we had to put some work into that. It is truly like a fucking killer by that definition. It does kick people in the ass. But fentanyl, man, it does suck, especially because it bleeds into my work. You'll have people, and I know, like, for more aggressive pains like femur fractures, severe car accidents, depending on like if they're vitally stable or not, I do like morphine. It's a little bit dirtier of a drug. Fentanyl's very clean, especially the ones that like, as far as medicine is concerned, the ones that we carry, or the fentanyl that we carry, is very clean compared to morphine. I use fentanyl for shorter, quicker kind of acting effects. Its half-life is a lot less than morphine. I use morphine for more severe traumas or more like fucked up situations. I use fentanyl for just a little bit to take that edge off and help them kind of get through the next situation. But it bleeds over, because like I had a lady, this woman was a trooper, man. She was walking from a bar out in the middle of BFE, rolled down. She was like, I twisted my ankle, I can't walk. I took her boot off, blood everywhere. Well, before we took her boot off, she had saturated through her boot. Blood, open fracture, a whole nine. Well, like, actually, it was like
bone protruding?
No, just like, well, yeah, I guess not, I guess. But it was open. You could see the bone, but it wasn't straight out. You could just like look in and see it.
Yeah.
And she had proximal and a distal fibula fracture, which just means at the top and at the bottom. She had that, and then dislocation on top of that. And
how hammered was this chick?
she was sober. She was actually pretty cherry. And she had walked on that ankle for almost like half a mile.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. And I went to go give her, or I was like, how do you feel about me giving you Fent? Because I ask everybody, because I know that there's a lot of, especially like how you mentioned the billboards and everything, there's a lot of fear around it. So I asked how, and she goes, oh, my son's been on that shit for years and blah, blah, blah. I don't want it. I don't want it. I was like, okay, but before I tell you that, I know you're in a lot of pain. What I'm giving you isn't the street stuff. It's my stuff. My stuff's cool. We have to report to the DEA on everything, especially if I fucking misplace one. I'll get in so much trouble.
oh yeah.
But, this isn't prolonged use. This is right now for the pain. And if you don't want it to, or don't want me to, fine. If you feel more comfortable with the name morphine being in you, that's fine. I'm just adjusting the dose because I try not to hit people to where I knock them down.
Yeah.
Again, just take that edge off enough to where they're like, oh, my pain's at a 10. And I'm like, what's your pain at now? And they're like, oh, it's like a 6 or a 7. I'm usually fine.
We want them responsive.
Yeah. I'm usually fine sitting in that realm. There has been one time where like this old lady's pain, I gave her 50 mics of Fent. I gave her 25 before we moved, and then we started like getting ready to move her, and she goes, no, fuck. And I was like, okay.
Was this the hip issue?
Yeah, it was the hip fracture. And I gave her another 25. She goes, okay, it feels good. We moved her. Holy shit. You would have thought we revamped, like took away all that Fent that we gave. She was back into pain. And I knew the road getting out was like super bumpy and shitty. And I was like, hey, I'm going to give you another 25 because this is going to suck. And sure as shit, I gave her the 25 and she was like, it still didn't like touch her. I waited a little bit, like about a minute or two. She was still in pain. So I finished off that last 25 and that was her dose. Because by the time we got to the hospital, she's like sleepy. Like I could still wake her up and easy. And I'd be like, hey, stay awake. And she'd go, okay. And she'd like sit herself up and, actually try to interact and whatnot. And we gave her some oxygen, managed everything. Because the nice part of, at least about giving opiates for pain is because I have Narcan. If I fuck up, I can reverse it. The hard part with like benzos, on the other hand, is because I don't have the reversal agent available to me. I have to be super cautious, especially about dosing people. Like you have some people. We had a lady the other day who was post-ictal after a seizure, which basically just means like a period where they're not themselves. Their brain went without oxygen for a little bit, and they're confused. Sometimes they're combative. She had tried to bite, claw, and scratch at everybody, and I was like, yeah, you're going to get 5 IM. So I just gave her 5 right away, and then she kind of became sleepy. Everything else was fine. Her respirators, everything were good, and about 5 minutes later, she came out of it, and she was back to normal. She was answering questions. Everything was appropriate. But had I decided to just be like, oh, man, fuck this chick. Why is she trying to bite us, and hit her with a full 10, I could have knocked out her respiratory drive. And then I'm like, because I don't have a reversal agent, now I have to manually ventilate this girl.
Jesus.
And then it adds on more to that because I got a bag and pray to God that I can do this long enough and maintain until the drug hopefully starts to subside a little bit and then she starts breathing on her own. Or I can take the full balls to the wall approach, intubate this girl, but then when she starts becoming conscious, I have to tag her with more drugs if I want to keep the tube in, or I have to make a plan to extubate because, as you know, you said you had a tube in your throat. It's fucking painful.
It's not fun. Yeah, thankfully, I wasn't in a ton of pain. It was a lot of discomfort. It was funny because when they had put me under for the general anesthesia, by the time that I realized I had obviously I was done with the surgery, but when I realized I had a tube in my throat, I was like, the fucking drugs didn't work. They didn't put me to sleep. Fuck. And I started feeling a little bit of pain because the fentanyl did wear off for like 10 minutes or so. Mm. But yeah, I couldn't imagine just getting that raw. Like, fuck that.
Yeah, and like, we look for like, you'll see people like, as they're intubated, they'll still be kind of out, but they'll start crying. Or you look at their vital signs, their heart rate will go up because they're in pain. Blood pressure will spike, they're in pain. And usually you have to knock that back down. And at that point, it's okay to do. Like, you can't give the drug prior. Like, I can't say, and I've seen it done before, and I yelled at this motherfucker. But you can't give an extensive amount of a drug, like, let's say 20 milligrams of Versed, which is a lot, and then knock somebody
What
out.
type of drug is that?
It's a benzo.
Okay.
You can't give them 20 milligrams, knock them down, and then take their airway, because that's considered what's a rapid sequence induction, or intubation is like the more lame term, but induction is the proper use or proper form. So it's like a makeshift RSI, which I'm knocking them down. I'm taking away their respiratory drive so I can take their airway, because they can't protect their own. A lot of times we have to play in that realm where if they're not meeting my criteria to intubate, I can't do it. But if they meet my criteria to intubate, like let's say the respirators are, completely dog shit and in the tank, and they have no intact gag reflex, and their saturation's poor, I clear their airway of like any vomit or anything that they have, and I choose to take. Afterwards, everything goes fine, and then I see that they start feeling pain, or they meet like that, increased vital signs, blood pressure, heart rate, and they start crying. Then I can give the fentanyl or the Versed on top of that. I can't mix the two. I have to choose one or the other. Usually fentanyl's a little bit better because we're trying to mitigate the pain. Benzos don't help pain. They just basically interrupt, like at the neuromuscular junction where they communicate. It interrupts that so they can't talk to each other. Then at that point, there's like no spasms or other problems like that. And that's why it's like popular for seizures.
So is that like you're taking away the informed consent of doing like a intubation?
No.
Or I'm trying to say like why that's a problem. Because again, I'm so fucking ignorant for all this
the
stuff.
RSI is because the reason it's a problem is because so it's a special skill here in the state of New Mexico. There are other states where like it's just expected of their paramedics, like at the national level of curriculum. As far as like NREMT is concerned, paramedics can RSI. Like I'm obligated to know those drugs and what they can do. Just to where if I went anywhere else in the country and they're like, hey, we have RSI protocols, and I'm like, cool, I'm familiar with that shit. Or hey, we have these protocols. National Registry is like the umbrella for all of us, right? And then each state gets to determine. But then if you're like in states like Colorado or California, it's county to county where they make the determination from there on. So the reason being is just RSI, requires an induction agent, a paralytic, shit like that to actually knock them down, make sure they're not going to feel it, and then appropriately take their airway. Like we had a ejection on the highway where I had worked. I couldn't do anything for this kid's airway. He had a significant head injury. So we just managed his respiration, his ventilation as best as we could, and his overall status. And then when the flight team got down, because they have that special skill, they RSI'd there on the spot. They pushed their etomidate, their succinylcholine, those meds to be able to take his airway appropriately and methodically. The way that if it was done like with strictly Versed or like a shit ton of fentanyl or morphine is like a very dirty way and fucked up way to do it. Because one, I don't have like backups for a lot of that shit. If I choose to knock somebody down and I don't have those special skills, or let's say I'm not like that good at intubation, I knock somebody down and I go to take the airway and I fuck it up, I'm bagging them the whole way. I have no choice. Or if I choose to like take that leap and go out of my skill range to do something, that's potentially lethal. So that's where like a lot of those problems come from, especially on this side. And what sucks, right, is so like a lot of those or like this, the skill of RSI can be super useful. There's one situation I can recall specifically where I had a head injury and the guy was trismus, like his jaw was so locked down and tight that it was hard to secure his airway, but he was still breathing fine. His respirators were okay. They started to become a little irregular, but he was still above the limit in which to like justify intubation. But because his jaw was locked down, I had to consider criking him.
Right.
I had to get ready to cut this dude's throat, and thankfully we pulled into UNM right at that moment, because I was on my internships in paramedic school, and I'm like shaking because there are 3 paramedics on this truck as we're rolling in with this dude, to include me, the student. So 4 of us motherfuckers, right? My preceptor goes, I haven't practiced a crike since P school, man. And the other two medics were like, they're like, dude, they're like, you're more fresh on the skill than all of us.
Oh,
they're like,
no.
They're like, when was the last time you practiced a crike? And I was like, 3 weeks ago. Like, feeling this dude's neck. Like, I was like, fuck. And even my preceptor, like, before he mentioned that, he saw me, like, feeling for, his cricothyroid membrane. And he was like, yeah, I've been thinking that too. Because I was able to, like...
He just sees you off to the side. You're just kind of fingering it a little bit,
Yeah,
getting it
like,
nice and
I
loose.
was like, come on, man. I was like, don't fuck it up. But I'm like sweating. And thankfully he had like enough space like between his cheek and gum that I can kind of like finagle a suction in there and like really pry to try to get some degree of an opening to suction out the fluids and keep him breathing properly. Because he was breathing fine. Like he had good chest rise and all that other shit.
But all that saliva buildups can be an issue.
It was blood.
Oh,
I was
blood.
out a fuck ton of blood.
Because brain injury, head injury.
Yeah, and we don't know what else was wrong in there. But because I didn't have RSI, I can't introduce the paralytic to unlock his jaw and go in from there. And I could give Versed, but the chances of it working are very minute. So then at that point, I just knocked out his respiratory drive and then didn't fucking fix the problem that I need to intubate. So now I just bought this dude a crike and fucked him up. He ended up getting criked anyways because
at the hospital.
Yeah, it just other reasons leading up to, but it's one of those things where the higher up in like skills that you're able to do, or like the cooler things you're able to do in the field, you also have to take into account when you do that, you're basically buying your patient some other shit. Like if you choose to do a chest dart, you bought them a chest tube. They get all of that fancy, big old tube and a blunt dissection right through the ribs. So the hard part is the curriculum and everything is built to the lowest common denominator. And I've seen some lowest common denominator medics. And they're rough. Especially because a lot of times you look at them and like at the time I was going through P school and I was judging a lot of the shit that they did. And, it's from a point of I have a book that told me to do shit and they have field experience that told them otherwise. Yeah. So I'm arguing like a very kind of moot point because I'm not the fucking medic. So I'm not writing this chart. I'm not doing anything on that. But, I voice my concerns anyways.
Well, because you're cross-referencing that with something you're literally getting taught it.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
And so it does require a lot of, you have to know, like, here's another example. I don't know if you heard, I think his name was Elijah King, or I know it was Elijah, I can't remember his last name. But it was a case out in Colorado where he was 19 years old, autistic, and cops were having an issue with him. They supposedly, I mean, obviously, because I wasn't there, supposedly they had told the medics, like, this dude needs ketamine. And I forget, I think it has, like, analgesic uses, and then it can also be used as, like, an induction agent to, like, completely knock somebody down. So you can take away the pain, but if you go a little bit further, you're causing, like, a disassociative dose where they're just... Yeah. They're high as fuck.
That's the K-hole effect.
Yeah. They're having a grand old time. But that's, dosed on by weight. And if you fuck that up, you can kill somebody. And essentially these guys gave him way too high of a dose because it's one of those medications that's dosed in like milligrams per kilogram. Like fentanyl, the general dosing range that we go about is 1 to 3 micrograms per kilogram. So ketamine, it has its different ranges based on if you're doing IV, IM, and what you're trying to achieve. Whether you're trying to achieve just taking away pain or you want to have like that disassociative dose. So you do have to do a lot of like little, just real fast calculations in your head, knowing what you're doing appropriately.
Can you try to find that case up in Colorado?
But essentially these medics fucking tagged him and eventually led to this kid dying of respiratory arrest. Jesus. So the higher up in skill, or like the higher skills that you get, there's a lot more education that has to come with it. And it is hard because...
By chance, was he a black violin player?
Yeah, he should look like a skinny little black kid.
Oh, wait a minute. I think I heard about that.
Huh?
Elijah McCain.
Yeah, that sounds right.
If you could find like a news report on YouTube or some shit, that's gonna ask you to, yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah. If you could find some shit on YouTube, I'd appreciate that. While he's finding that, you brought up the tracheotomy. My only knowledge of that is like Saw 5, Saw 6. I forget which one it is. I think it's the end of Saw 5 because what happens is one of the dudes who ends up being one of Jigsaw's helpers gets caught in a trap where it's Saw 5 because it's the box art for the movie. Where the dude with the head is caught in the water or the cage, the glass cage.
Yeah.
The water fills up. He's freaking out, so he grabs a pen and just stabs himself. Creates a tracheotomy, and he starts breathing, and he survives. So I think I rewatched all those movies like a year and a half ago.
That kid.
Yeah, let's see what's going on here.
Give us some more units. We're fighting them.
Tonight, police officers and paramedics in Aurora, Colorado are facing criminal charges after
Aurora can't catch a break, can they?
While he walked home from a convenience store.
We're here today because Elijah McClain is not here, and he should be.
Police had gotten a call about a suspicious man wearing a mask.
Fighting introverts?
They restrained him with a carotid hold, and paramedics injected him with a powerful sedative, ketamine.
I can't breathe correctly because
Now, a 32-count indictment. 2 officers, a former officer, and 2 paramedics each face a count of manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide. 4 of the 5 also face assault charges. McLean's family described him as a kind introvert who played his violin to comfort cats at an animal shelter. They say he often wore a mask to keep warm because of a blood condition.
This is a loud and resounding statement that nobody is above the law.
Right after his death in August of 2019, prosecutors did not charge anyone. For these protesters, but the case drew renewed attention last year following the murder of George Floyd. Some of McLean's last words, "I'm just different," became a rallying cry. Calling that response a hysterical overreaction, today the Aurora Police Union said our officers did nothing wrong. Apparently, Mr. McLean died due to a combination of exertion due to his decision to violently resist arrest and a pre-existing heart condition.
Fuck those guys.
His father wept as he heard the news.
It just means a lot that the people will be held accountable for what they did. And I know my son will be smiling.
Legal experts say that while it's unusual for police officers to face charges in this type of case, it's extremely rare for paramedics to do so.
So
Jesus, dude, what the okay, I didn't know that last part where they just got off scot-free. I had no idea about that.
yeah, and like that case did piss me off, right? Because that's negligence, man. That's as far as those medics are concerned, especially because in order to get into paramedic school, I had to take a biomedical ethics class. And how to go all about that and, learning about different types of ethics.
How to not kill people?
No, just how to, provide appropriate medical care while still being ethical towards the situation and, like, what does constitute, like, abuse, negligence, and shit like that.
Because it sounds like to me they were trying to give him ketamine so he'd stop resisting.
Yeah.
In what universe is that ethical?
So there, and here's my take on it, right?
Especially with the context of this case.
Yeah. So if I was one of those medics showing up, and the cops told me to give him medication to knock him down, I'd tell him no. I'd be like, and like I wouldn't make an attempt. I'd be like, get the fuck off of him. Let me try to talk to him, or at least like stand by. If he's truly like violent and wanting to like yelling out, "I'm gonna fucking kill you," I'm gonna do shit like that. Usually at that point is where the line would be like, if he's going to go to the hospital, maybe. But if he's getting criminal charges and he's not like complaining, like any condition to do with outside of what the cops are doing as far as like holding him down and doing shit like that, maybe. But like all my interaction with the police department and where I work, it's all been good. We've never had situations like that. Especially after like George Floyd, like a lot of cops just won't touch people. But So, like, let's say I rolled up on that, and they were like, "Oh, he needs to be sedated and whatever." And I'm like, "You don't tell me what the fuck to do." Yeah. No, because you asked for that, and I'd be a dick. I'd be like, because you asked for that, no, I'm not giving you shit. Like, is he being arrested, or are you guys just trying to like detain and figure out shit? Because at that point, it's your problem. You need to mitigate the situation.
Well, because it'd be one thing if they're trying to detain this guy. I'm not a cop. I've never been a cop. I've never been trained as a cop. But I'd imagine that if you were a police officer or a team of police officers and medical personnel comes to a scene like that and trying to restrain a guy, you would think that at least one of those cops would speak up and say, hey, this guy's got a gun. This guy has a knife. This guy has some sort of lethal ability to take one of our lives. He has something on him that could hurt one of us.
Well, if they had said that, I'd fuck off. I'd be like, cool, fix that situation.
Well, not even for the argument of hit him with a drug, but just for your own safety. Like, hey, we're trying to get this guy restrained. He's got a gun. You would think that if this guy was really threatening to them, they said it was 15, 16 years old.
19.
19, okay. A 19-year-old kid should not be a threat to 3 cops. I'm sorry, he shouldn't be. She shouldn't be. They shouldn't be. Any extraneous pronoun shouldn't be. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, that shouldn't be an issue. And I would imagine that if this person really did deserve whatever type of restraint that they were getting, there were some weapons involved, and they would have said that. And the fact that none of that was present, and obviously he didn't fucking have anything on him, I mean, the first thing out of their mouths being, he needs ketamine. I mean, come on.
Again, I wasn't there, but that's what I swear
it's easy to fill in the blanks here. It's easy-ish to fill in the blanks here.
So, like I said, with situations like that, with, you know, me having my medic license now, had somebody told me that, or like if I walked on scene and they're like, yeah, this guy needs Versed, I'd be like, I'm making that determination.
Yeah.
That's not.
Because what medical classes have they gone through?
Exactly.
To be a fucking paramedic.
They get, you know, like their little first aid CPR class, you know, general like wound management and whatnot for gunshots and tourniquets and whatnot. But so for situations like that, for the medics to act the way that they did and do,
God, I give you shit, but that tastes good.
For them to take the actions in which they did, is like aggressively inappropriate. It's so far past, because even if, from what I read, even if they did, you know, appropriately make the decision to give this guy ketamine, they still did a gross overdose on this guy. They gave him a pretty significant amount, and we had even talked about it a little bit in my class, and it was amongst the students, because if I remember correctly, we just didn't want to bring it up to the instructors because we didn't want to put them in that like spot where their students,
that what if situation.
Yeah,
it's a weird conversation to have in a setting like that.
I felt like it was a little bit more, you know, something as a peer-to-peer and not a student to teacher kind
any
of
type of authority.
Yeah,
because they don't really win in that situation. They're just slightly less wrong.
Yeah, but we had talked about it, and you know, all of us unanimously, holy shit, words are hard, agreed that that shouldn't have been the case at all if we had it. And that's why, like, drugs like ketamine, you know, do require special skills. Like Rio Rancho Fire has ketamine, but they have a big fucking fuck you poster on the wall in their ambulance that's like the dose based on weight and all of that shit.
Well, that's good.
Essentially, you shouldn't be able to fuck
like
it
a
up.
Cheat sheet, right?
Yeah, just, you know, quick down and dirty. I look over, my patient's 170 pounds. This is what I draw up. Cool. Good to go. It's that simple cheat sheet. Shit like that, you know, is nice and easy. It helps it helps the department. Like, if anything was to happen, then you'd be like, they had that. The fact that they fucked up is on them. Yeah. And it also, like, protects the medic where, you know, if something was to go wrong, it's like, look, this is what I'm dealing with. This is blah, 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 blah. This is why I dosed appropriately. Or this is why maybe I altered. Why I like decreased the dose a little bit because of age or X, Y, and Z, whatever reason that they may want to come up with. But for this situation, especially when it comes to such a high intensity situation where the cops are trying to restrain somebody, usually I'm in a sit and observe situation. Yeah. I'm watching to see if there's anything that is negligent as far as officers are concerned. That way, so me and my partner can be in a situation to speak up, like, hey, that's fucked up. Don't do that shit. Or don't touch them like that. Don't act this way. But I'm also protecting myself and my partner as well, because if I just step in and I'm like, oh yeah, time to give it to them. Okay, good.
You are now involved.
Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong. I've been in situations, not where me as the medic, but I've been with a medic who's made that decision. And it's usually been because this person does need to go to the hospital. They're altered. They can't answer anything. So now we have to.
But they're using some kind of substance.
Not always. There has been situations where it's like severe paranoid schizophrenia.
Okay.
And it comes to they need to get medicated. You'll have family that'll be like they haven't been taking their medications for months or shit, or they've been self-medicating. One of the common things is self-medicating with like meth and alcohol, which worsens or exacerbates the situation. So it does depend, and you do have to take all that information in before you make that decision on what to do next. But like, if I've been in those situations where cops are trying to help, just hands to hold somebody down so I can give them Versed. But it's usually because I made the decision and asked them, hey, this is how we're going to attack it. Or the medic has made the decisions like, hey, this is how we're going to attack the situation. We do need you guys to help hold down so I can give Versed so this person can go to the hospital. But we're not trying to dose them to where they're out. We're trying to dose them to where even if they are still conscious and they're trying to fight, it's just like, they're very sluggish, lethargic, like still trying to.
Because again, like we said a little bit earlier, you still want them responsive.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to be lugging around a corpse.
And, I even have like physical restraints on that where I can, do arms and feet. And usually that's like this medication first, physical restraint second, because people can fuck themselves up, especially if they're not in the right state of mind. There's been
tear a tendon, tear a muscle, break something.
Like, the way you're restrained is you have one arm up, one arm down, and then both of your feet down where they're at. People have dislocated their shoulders. Like,
for sure.
Trying to fucking.
Well, again, my buddy that passed away, he fucking OD'd once already. And when they threw him in the restraints, he was freaking the fuck out. And he tore something in his shoulder, I think he told me. He tore something up in his shoulder because, again, he was not in the right state of mind. And he just kept gyrating and it went.
And, for situations like that, right, like where he's gyrating, doing all that shit, you're trying to give those medications so, one, they're not hurting you as the medic, or they're not hurting themselves, because clearly we want to return people to the hospital in a better condition than when we found them.
Right.
That's what field medicine is just find the problem, fix it, try to make it better. That way, so when we hand them to the hospital, they have a little bit better of a situation to work with, or, maybe the exact same.
Yeah.
But we didn't do anything worse. Situations like that are making it worse because you basically took something that didn't need to happen and then made it worse by introducing a drug. And then you're wondering, like, I don't know why everybody's mad at me.
Yeah.
Because you chose to fuck around.
You made that situation as worse as it could possibly be.
Yeah. And, through any sort of public service job like fire, police, EMS, there's... you kind of have like a sense of like provider fatigue or just general fatigue of like dealing with the same type of people. So a lot of times it does make people a lot more cynical. Like, I'm cynical towards certain calls. I like to believe I'm appropriately cynical, but that's also just ignorance on my part, because there has been some times where I've been told like you need to check your fucking anger. I have like my fucking forehead vein.
Your dick vein going through it?
Dude, like...
That's what I get told when I get mad. I have a fucking dick vein that goes right down the center of my forehead.
Because sometimes we run those like legally have to take the person to the hospital. You legally... But then like, I've had situations where there's been people where like we're just like, oh, not them again. Like, we hear the address or we hear...
the frequent
where
flyers.
it is, and we know exactly. So we're like, oh, fuck. So we roll up and... there's still that voice in the back of my head. It was like, okay, well, if for whatever reason this is legitimate and not just whatever the usual shit, if this is more serious, what am I going to do? This is my plan to do this. I'm going to bring this down, bring that down. And I've walked into situations, like recently me and my partner had a call where we walked in because we were told it was one thing and it was a violently different call. and we had to, get to work and do all of that. And, at that point, like for me, like any sort of like judgment on the person goes out the window because I'm here to work. I'm here to, do my job.
You have a job to do. Yeah, exactly.
And the hard part is a lot of times, especially with, the nice part for me is I have like some degree of diagnostic equipment. I have like my life pack and other things where I can make sure, this is okay, this is okay. Like I've had people who, as they're getting arrested, especially after George Floyd, it's become very common for a lot of people, like when they're getting arrested, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. So, we cover all the bases. We go in there, we get the pulse ox on them. Okay, they're oxygenating fine. We'll listen to their lung sounds, make sure the air is moving appropriately as it needs to. I'll throw them on an end tidal to just see how much CO2 they're blowing off, if that's appropriate. Maybe there's not so much of a respiratory component to it, but maybe it's more of a metabolic component to that. And, we'll throw them on a 12 lead just because obviously they have breathing issues. And from there, I can kind of see, it's not 100% guaranteed, but I can see sometimes if they're having like a pulmonary embolism and shit like that, just by looking at like certain differences on my EKG. But like, one example of a call that was like violently different was we had got called out for a stroke. And they're like, his face is drooping, all of this. It's so serious. They're treating it like, they're watching this dude actively deteriorate in front of them. So we get on scene, and it takes a while because it's out in the county. It takes a little bit. We get on scene, and I walk in, and I see this dude just present a giant knife to me. Big old, massive, like 12-inch blades serrated on the back. And I was like, later. I didn't even see him. He just threw his arm around the corner. So from that situation, like it's up to my safety. And we did have to call cops to come out and get us. And we fucked off right out of there immediately. They show up. They were able to kind of get him out of the house. And I was able to see him and realize he didn't have a whole lot of problems.
So the family was calling in this?
Friends.
Okay.
But yeah, they called
civilians were calling this in. Okay.
And, they were telling me, they're like, don't leave. It's serious. And I was like, yeah, it's serious. He pulled a knife on me. I'm gone later. We pulled like around the corner.
This is seriously no longer my issue.
Yeah, I got to a point because, if he is having a medical emergency, he doesn't benefit if I'm stabbed.
Well, you don't benefit if you're stabbed. No, fuck that guy. He's got a knife. Fuck him.
But, like they have us every time, like, scene safety, all of that.
Yeah.
And, like when you're getting onto a scene, you're looking at everything like, okay, cool. I'm seeing like a more rundown house, a little bit more like lower income. What do I have to worry about? How's everybody else acting? Because like there's some people being calm over here, there's these people freaking out over here, everything's going one way or another. You're constantly like, your head's supposed to be on a swivel, but there's sometimes you get caught in those situations, and that's what fucks some people up or gets some people fucked up. But like in that situation, we had to wait for state police to come out, and all I'm thinking is at that point, I kind of started to think I knew who it was, because at first I didn't see him, but then I started putting two and two together, and I was like, okay, maybe it's this guy. And usually, when he calls, he fights with EMS because somebody calls for him. He doesn't want to be going, and so I'm like, but if this is serious, we got to get him out. Like we got to get him gone. And how do I do that if he doesn't fucking want me to touch him? And, it's making sure he's able to make appropriate decisions. I got to ask my A&O questions. I got to ask all this shit. And even though he pulled a fucking knife on me, once I get in to actually assess this dude, I have to be calm about it.
Yeah.
I have to.
Because it's your job.
Yeah, I have to put away the fact that, this man just threatened my fucking life.
Yeah.
And now I have to go back to work.
So I want to finish the tracheotomy question. I had another question pop in my head that I'm going to ask you, but because it pertains to this a lot more. A two-parter. One, are you of the belief that EMS, any kind of medical personnel that gets called out, should you guys either be required or have the option to carry any type of protective equipment, like not necessarily up to a handgun, sure, but like baton, mace, stun gun, stuff like that, pepper spray? And then the second part of that question is there, I feel like I kind of know the answer to this, but because of context, I feel like it has to be asked. Are you guys trained at all, or do you even have the option to be trained in any type of self-defense, not even, I don't even think the word combative even goes into anything you get taught, but like any type of self-defense, protective technique. Are you guys taught any of that? Or do you have the option to do that through any type of company or schooling you go through? Because I always thought about that when medical personnel go to the scene where police are involved, or at least are going to be involved, it would benefit you guys to have some of those same skills as police officers. Obviously, you guys aren't expected to arrest. Yeah. You're not expected to detain, but there should be a level of restrainment going on.
So, as far as like the option to, like the most, I know that there's a couple guys I work with that will, they have plate carriers, or like some degree of like just soft armor.
Like Kevlar.
Yeah.
Like level 2 type, like padding.
Yeah, just like, general like lower level 3 stuff, or like 3A plus. Like if I wanted to, I can roll on scene with level 4 plates and just for a fucking drunk call and be like, I don't know, man.
Break the bottle on my chest, bitch. I dare you.
But, we have the option to wear that protective equipment if we so like see the situation fit. The hard part was saying like tasers, mace, and even up to a handgun. I know some motherfuckers, especially that work in the field. I don't work with them now. I used to. They should not have the ability to be near a firearm.
Yeah, because obviously like psych evals and training, and like a bunch of liability coverage or like liability preventatives would have to be in place for sure. Mm-hmm. But you could make that argument for the police, for the military, that there's people that work in those fields that shouldn't be carrying weapons.
But the difference is, and this is one thing that I at least see, is body cams. Technically, EMS can't, or well, not technically, but they can't wear body cams because it's a HIPAA violation.
Ooh.
If it was to get out into the inappropriate hands. There's maybe a way around it, but I've always heard HIPAA.
So why is it not HIPAA with police officers when they have to go to medical calls?
Because they're not a medical professional. As far as I remember, I don't think it actually applies because the situation is...
Can you look that up, if HIPAA applies to police body cams? I've never thought about that. That's interesting. Yeah, I've never thought about that.
Because from what I remember from HIPAA laws is like, let's say like I ran a call and it was your mom. Legally, I can't tell you what went down.
Right.
I could probably, like, if you were like, hey, is she okay? I'd be like, yeah, she's fine. But if you wanted to know everything about it, it's like
the actual details of it all.
Yeah, then it's like, that's up for her to allow for me to disclose, or for somebody to disclose to you when it comes on. Usually, like, I'll just do very general statements as far as, like, when family asks, like, oh, are they going to be okay right now? We're doing the best efforts in which we can. This is kind of like a blanket statement of what we're dealing with. We're going to get this done just right, or we're going to do what we can. Right now, I just need you to stay out here, or whatever the case may be. In certain situations, it all just comes down to general information.
This is just like people that are associated with the hospitals. It really only applies to.
Yeah. Employees, volunteers, trainees, and other persons who conduct work in under direct control of the hospital.
Yeah.
So video recordings by patients or their visitors which inadvertently record the private information of the patient would not necessarily constitute a HIPAA. That's weird.
So
that's strange. We don't have to go into it now, but I'd love to find out like what led to that ruling being a thing. That's interesting. Huh. So it wouldn't apply to... So it doesn't apply to police officers if they go to a medical call and they're recording. That's not a HIPAA violation. That inadvertently would become evidence. But... So you guys... Again, I'm ignorant to this kind of stuff, so this is just off the top of my head. If you guys wore body cams, wouldn't that footage just have to go directly to the company you work for?
Yeah, like maybe in the same way that our charts do.
Yeah,
it would
exactly.
Have to go to like a protected server where hopefully nothing gets out, and that's kind of the realm in which you're dealing with, right? Is there's a lot of variables that are added to it, so it's just easier to not. But if we were to implement, like tasers, mace, or any of that other shit, it would be justifiable to say that at least body cams should be used. In this case, it goes through a protected server. That way, so in the case that, you know, any sort of aggressive force was used,
you can pull back on
pull
it.
that and see what led up to it. Because again, if without the body cams, I know a lot of people that probably would have just maced some drunk because they're pissed off that day.
Yeah.
And, you know, like
Just like the police officers do.
yeah, and you know, that's not right.
Yeah.
So it's justifiable to say, at least within the current environment of everything, I don't think it's necessarily appropriate, because we do have stuff like being able to call an officer to come and help with the situation.
But in your case, because you work out in the boonies, I mean, I know staters that have to wait 45 minutes for backup to arrive.
So for us, a lot of it is, you know, taking in information and making appropriate decisions. Like when I'm walking into a situation that looks like it could be bad, that's the thing.
You don't even engage it.
Yeah, if we feel like at any point, like you get that tingle in your spine or just something feels off, like call back.
Off.
Dude, I've had situations where I haven't even gotten close, and I'm like, hey, give me an officer en route just with me, and the dispatch is like, why? And I'm like, because I asked. Get me my cop. I don't care. Because I fucking asked you
What
to.
a shitty dispatch.
Because maybe the guy with the gun and the taser and the mace might be able to help me if I'm about to get fucked up. All right? Don't question me. And, you know, I've had those situations where, like, the cops have shown up, we've seen, and I'll look at them and be like, you know, you can leave. Like, this is just to make sure everything is okay. Or, like, we've had households where they're known to be a little bit more aggressive and violent sometimes. And, like, we'll show up and we'll call for the officer to come with us, and then we'll show up. And the dude's like, yeah, no, I'm, like, seriously hurting. Like, shit's fucked up. I need to go. I'm not going to fight with you guys. And we're like, cool, man. Later. Because in the back of my head, you know, if I was to have tasers, mace, and other shit like that, I also have meds at my disposal. If I so...
Yeah, but if that fucker's shooting at you, your meds aren't going to do shit.
And that's why I'm a firm believer in held all darts. I think we need to have a blowgun.
100 micrograms. Right in the fucking eye. Because your bullseye apparently... Okay, anyway, so the second part of that question, are you guys afforded the ability to do self-defensive training? Are you, like, I'm going to take this question a little further. Are you able to, like, go through the same course of, like, hand-to-hand defense, not hand-to-defensive, but, like, preventative, like restraining stuff that, like, police officers are able to? Like, do you have that option? Is that a thing? Should that be a thing?
So I know we're taught, like, how to kind of get somebody into restraints and how to fight and do stuff like that, but it's very, very minimal.
Like bare bones, right?
And I, like, if you wanted to go take a class and shit to do like that, you can.
Well, I'm not talking like, of course, well, right, yes, but like I'm talking like
I haven't been afforded that.
Right, like
option.
if like through your schooling has there ever been the opportunity or I didn't think so, but like,
and I don't know if there's another place in the country that does maybe, but I know it's something that I haven't been afforded. But
that's one of those things where it's like it's not useful until it is.
Yeah. And the thing that sucks, right, is so with all of that, the whole question itself, if I had, like, you know, or I was afforded the education as far as, like, properly defending myself, I know to some degree legally within reason, I can take appropriate actions to protect myself. But it has to be, like, truly in that self-defensive. And even then it starts to kind of, like, wander into a gray area.
Why did the EMS guy sucker punch him in the temple?
Dude, I got punched by a patient square on the top of my head.
Oh, I'm sure you have.
And
that's not shocking at all.
And, you know, I yelled at the dude, and he calmed down afterwards. But obviously...
Hey, motherfucker!
Yeah, like, you know, obviously, like... You know, that want to just return fire, but he just threw one punch and then kind of sat there and was like, and what's...
Pop, just kidding.
You know, what sucks is, like, naturally, like, you want to fight the dude. Yeah. But my company or everywhere else would have been like, why didn't you just stand up and move? He was on the gurney in seatbelts. You could have just walked behind him and, like, been out of the way. And it's like, you're fucking right. Son of a bitch. You get so it's playing like the bigger person the whole time.
Yeah, the moral high ground has to be taken when you're a public servant. I get that.
Yeah, and like especially for us, like I've had situations where patients have like straight up come at and like fought, and you are trying to do more of like the restraining aspect of it. But like I had one kid, and this was like years ago. I had one kid who bit me on my leg. Oh,
that's got to be a scary thing when you get bit by a patient. This like what diseases did I just get inflicted with?
yeah, and humans have a shit ton of bacteria in their mouths.
Yeah.
It's grody. But thankfully, when he bit down, his jaw caught on my trauma shears, so he wasn't able to like clamp down on skin. And
I don't know why that's so funny to me. Fuck that guy. He deserved that shit.
so we had state police on scene, and they didn't want to touch him. They didn't want to do anything to help this situation. So
What was the reasoning? Was there reasoning?
they showed up like just like in the middle of us kind of fighting him.
And they were like,
they're
the
like,
EMS guys got
They're like,
it.
you're on it. You got it. Well,
Oh
because
my God.
So he had gotten me, and then we're like, okay, this kid needs to be medicated. We got to give him Versed to get him out of here because he was on some sort of drug. I can't remember what it was, but somebody had said acid and maybe something else. But yeah, so he bit, stuffed, and then we got him down. And
that kid's a real asshole getting violent off acid.
And so I had him, restrained, and even the cops showed up, and they're like, how did you end up like this? And I told them the whole story, and they're like,
It's record scratches. So I bet you're wondering how I got here.
well, and so like, I think at the time I was like maybe 22 and not as fat. So I'm like 22, not as fat. And I have the older medic who's with me. And then we're with our 4'10" trainee little blonde girl. And I'm the one like wrestling this like 6'2" kid. And I have him down and like holding it. I'm like, give him the fucking Versed. They're like, well, we want to get an IV. I was like, tag him in the arm, please, for the love of Christ. Like, so pissed. And, with that situation, I've talked about it, and I've asked other people or other like providers, like, do you feel like that was appropriate? Just curious. And
Like you restraining the guy? Was
Like,
that appropriate?
yeah, like the actions, like leading
Or
up,
the
like-
drug?
No, like me going in, like, so he bit me and then started like getting up to tackle, and then I had rolled him over. I had one arm in between my legs, and he's resting like on my stomach, and then I had his other arm up, and I'm not like bowing back, but it's enough, like I'm kind of curled up enough to where I'm not like hyperextending.
Yeah, you're not
anything,
hurting the kid, but you're protecting yourself.
but I'm keeping his arms from being able to punch, and he's still out of range to where like he can't, unless he's the exorcist and turns around and bites me.
Yeah.
He's not really like able to cause a whole lot of harm. And then the medic had like got onto his legs, wrapped him up, and kind of laid there while the trainee sat there, got the line to get the medication because she really wanted to give IV. So part of holding the arm was to hold his arm straight enough so she can obtain that line.
I want to check my box. It has to be an IV.
Right. And so, that situation, for the sake that the kid had already made an attempt to bite me and then was fighting and all of that, to an extent within reason to appropriately mitigate the situation, yeah, we can act. But had I got him in a rear naked choke and been like, go to sleep, I would have been under so much shit. And even, the state officer showed up, and him and I had talked about it afterwards because we're loading this kid up, and he's nice and, feeling woozy, looking at butterflies and stars and shit after, the med was given. We, I was like, hey, man, just a quick question. And he goes, you're okay. Like, I don't see any form of abuse or negligence there. And then I had even brought it up to my boss and my management, and I told them, because when it comes to situations like that, or like shit that gets real fucking dicked right out of the start, I'll tell my supervisors right away, because I'm like, I'm not getting in trouble by trying to hide this shit. I'm going to tell you, like, hey, this is what happened.
Right.
And most of it, like, and even that situation came down to where they're like, yeah, we'll look into it. We'll read the chart. We'll do all of this, and we'll go from there. And then, nothing came out of it, thankfully. And even the kid's family, like his dad was there, and the kid's dad, because he was 16, I think. And the kid's dad was like, thanks for trying to help the situation. He's like, I'm old and I couldn't fight him like that. And I was like, okay, as long as you're not mad. I didn't want to do it, but he bit me.
Fuck. Yeah, fuck that kid. Okay. So you brought up meth a little bit earlier. I don't think it's a simple question, but a short one. So I've wondered this myself off and on. Why do you obviously it's addictive and it's cheap, but like, and maybe that is the answer. I don't know. But it just in your experience of dealing with people, because you practice in New Mexico, we're big on that shit. They made a fucking TV show out of it. In your opinion, why is meth so prevalent and addictive? Like, not addictive. Let me rephrase that. Why is it so prevalent and common? Like, why is that like the drug? And it's not going away. Like, yeah, fentanyl's big right now, and that's not going to go away either. And that's due to a plethora of reasons that go outside of New Mexico, right? But like, that's a countrywide issue. It's part of the opiate crisis, like you brought up earlier. But like with methamphetamine, that's also a nationwide thing too. But it's like super prevalent here in New Mexico. Like, why, in your opinion, like why is that happening here so much? Why is it staying?
It's cheap.
Because for people that don't know, people that are, surprisingly enough, we have an audience outside of New Mexico and an audience outside of America. So to all the internationals, what is in meth typically? I know it has a bunch of different compounds. If you don't know, we've got old boy that can look it up. But like, what's in it? How easy is it to make? And why is it everywhere?
So, like, I know with meth, like Sudafed is one of like the more popular things. I don't know.
Can you look up like the generic ingredients for meth? Thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna learn how to cook meth on the podcast. All right, get ready, everybody.
Dude, there's this fucking
if you want,
there's this brewery up in Rio Rancho. I went there because they were holding a comedy night up there, and it's based off of like the
Marketplace.
Dude, what's fucked up is you're probably not wrong. You buy a fucking washing machine, and then when you pull out the little thing where you put the laundry soap in, the detergent, meth. It's just packaged in there, dude.
Here's a whole kilo of meth.
So there's this brewery up in Rio Rancho called Brew Labs, and it's like themed after Breaking Bad. Mm-hmm. And obviously it's not the fucking like, well, maybe it is. I don't know. I'm not smart. I don't know science. But when you walk in, there's the big wall to the left of you. It's all green, and it has a bunch of chemical compounds, like the actual like the hexagonal drawings and shit.
Yeah.
I'm not fucking smart. Whatever those are called. Those are on the wall, and it looks like the chemical makeup of meth. And I'm looking at that, and I'm like, Rio Rancho is that white that they trust these people just to have the ingredients to meth up here, and they're not going to do shit about it.
Well,
okay.
So, like, what I know from making meth is it's like a very volatile process, and that's why you have a lot of explosions. Yeah, pseudoephedrine.
Wait, what is that word that starts with E?
Ephedrine.
What the fuck is ephedrine?
I don't know off the top of my damn head.
Okay, so common items that could be used to make meth are lithium, taken from batteries, lye, which is sodium hydroxide, and hydrogen peroxide, antifreeze and drain cleaner, and freon, which is a gas found in AC. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Materials that used to cook meth, commonly found in homes, such as coffee filters, rubber hoses, soda bottles. Holy fuck. And then, yeah, the risk of fire and explosion, because all that shit's flammable as fuck. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Jesus Christ. The legal risk of cooking meth. I could solve that. It's bad. Go to jail. Felony. Like, why is there making and selling meth is illegal? Well, I could have fucking wrote that. Anyway, so in your opinion, why is it so prevalent and why is it staying around as long as it is?
Because it's cheap to sell. Like, especially when it comes to
and then I'll tack one more thing onto that. How prevalent is it in all the drug calls that you've taken? How prevalent is it? Like, how many times do you see meth? You would say out of 10 drug calls, How many of them are meth related? Do you
Maybe
think?
like one or two, to be
Really?
completely honest. Commonly, what I see is like people will like speedball, or they'll mix like some sort of opiate, heroin, for example, and then meth. Like if they get too high on heroin, then they'll smoke a little meth and bring themselves up. Another reason is like commonly, especially what I've seen, is people who do meth, they're up for like 3 days, and they're the most productive members of society for that brief little stint of time. They clean their whole fucking house. They get shit done.
It's weird you say that, right? Like on a surface level, but I've brought this up before. One of the most interesting interviews I've ever seen on Rogan was fucking Dr. Carl Hart. This dude who he's an actual doctor, and he's dedicated his entire life now to learning about and teaching about drugs of all kinds, shapes, sizes, and forms. And he says publicly about how, because it's like decriminalized in some states, he does heroin recreationally and in small doses. And
so did Mr. Crowley.
And he talks about how like it makes him a better father, a better husband, a better like it makes him a better he's always learning, right? A better student. Like it just enhances his life on every level. And I know that heroin and meth are very different compounds, but like, what the fuck?
I mean, there's some degree of that stimulant effect, right? Like, I don't know if you've ever heard Andrew Hubert talk about like nicotine in the brain,
Yeah,
and like how it has that stimulant effect, and how, because even through paramedic school, I dipped the whole time, and I felt like maybe it had helped me, because I know like when I do quit, I'm very lethargic, I'm forgetful, I have those lapses in memory. Maybe it's due to the nicotine. Maybe it's because I'm retarded. Who knows? I'm yet to see a neurologist to ask actual questions. But with that being said, like more stimulating drugs such as meth, they tend to stay around because people like kind of being up and amped and doing shit. With like your more CNS depressants, a lot of common things that I do see with people who like do significant or more significant amounts of like CNS depressants, such as alcohol, opiates, benzos, and shit like that. Part of it is medical error, right? They had a back injury in fucking 98 and they've been on morphine for fucking decades, and they just can't stop because that's
big pharma at work. They're not going to fix your problem. They'll just keep you medicated. So you keep coming back and sucking from the government's teat.
And then at that same point, they get these people addicted due to medical error, or like due to just prescription drugs, and then they graduate to heroin, and then they graduate to just buying shit off the street because they burn through their prescription so fast. And it's really no fault of their own. It's because they've been kind of pushed into an addiction, or
it's perpetual pain.
Given that route for addiction, right? So then, like, some people, especially on heroin, who like end up using meth, it's because they do too much heroin. So then they have to balance themselves out with meth so they don't die and overdose. And that's like where, that whole like prevalence comes from. To be completely honest, I don't run a whole lot of people who like the main complaint is because of meth. I know later on, like it can lead to, a development of schizophrenia to some degree. They have a lot of mental issues that start to play in because it's exacerbated by consistent stimulant usage. But like I've had schizophrenic patients who are like diagnosed from like being such a young age with schizophrenia, and they started using meth as like an attempt to self-medicate. And for whatever reason they chose meth, maybe they feel like it levels them out a little bit, or it silences because they're so stimulated and ready to go. It helps kind of like narrow their focus, whatever the reason may be. That's why I think its prevalence remains, is because there is still like that demand for it to some degree as far as on the streets. A lot of it does have to do with how, especially in this country, we do treat mental health in general. It's kind of like a back seat to a lot of issues. usually it would be like, oh, this schizophrenic dude on meth. But the complaints are never because of meth. Like I've had a couple where they're like, I had one dude, I was at a gas station, we were filling up the ambulance, and he walked up to me and he goes, "Hey man, I haven't slept in 5 days." And I was like, "Do you do meth?" And he goes, "A little bit." And I was like, "I'm going to tell you this right now. I don't care what you do. Don't lie to me though. But if you're doing more than a little bit of meth, my recommendation is to tone that the fuck down. That's why you haven't slept. That's why you haven't eaten. That's why you haven't done any of this shit, because that drug keeps you from doing, those basic necessities. It, hyperactivates your system to where you don't feel hungry. It suppresses your appetite because you're in this like fight or flight situation where you're just kind of ready to go. You're stimulated the entire time. So these people, those people aren't eating. They're not sleeping. They're just constantly fucking amped up and ready to go. And that's usually what I see as far as in the field. But it does suck because the thing is like in Espanola, I had heard a couple people where like dealers will walk around and they know who like the for lack of a better term junkies are, and they'll sell them just enough heroin to get them through the day for like fucking cents. Less than $1 amount, like enough to just shoot them up real quick and then just give them that fix so they're stimulated. Keeps the money in the drug dealer's pocket and it keeps everything moving forward, because at this point such an addiction has formed that they can't live without it, and it can be life-threatening, truly. Like you can't just off of alcohol, benzos, and like heroin, you can't just stop.
Can you go cold turkey off of meth?
You can, but it's fucking aggressive, and there still are some life-threatening effects. Like you can seize, you can have other issues that lead to, and so it's not so much it's more so the fact that like your brain now is in just this fucking survival mode because it's not getting what it's been craving this entire time. It starts becoming overactive, thinking too much, going ape shit, neurons keep firing, and eventually it leads to a seizure. It can happen. Somebody that I know very personally did cold turkey quit heroin, and he said for that first like week was hell, and he's lucky that nothing did happen, but he was just fucking dying. And so if you have like a large plot of land, the state of New Mexico, I think if I remember correctly, will actually pay you to put up a methadone clinic on that land. Or if like you own property where they can put up a methadone clinic. So that's where you see like drugs like methadone and Suboxone, because they're opiates in the same way, but they're like, it's supposed to like titrate to get you off over a gradual time. Like, I want to quit, using heroin. They'd be like, all right, here's like these little Suboxone strips. When you feel a craving, take one. It should help you have that for X amount of time. Or methadone, like you have to go in every couple days and they'll dose you on methadone to try to get you through to the next day. And then after you've acclimated to that, then they drop the dose a little bit more. Then when they keep dropping and dropping and dropping. But the hard part is people are on that shit for fucking years, and usually they never get off. And then, speaking of street shit, Suboxone and methadone start making their way on. Because then you'll have people that will take their Suboxone, and then they'll sell it so they can go buy heroin. And they'll save themselves for, the next time until they can go get their Suboxone again, sell that, and continue on because it helps them do or continue on what they've been doing. So it's just a perpetual cycle, especially like when it comes to meth. Like a lot of this shit is just a perpetual cycle of, requirement of that stimulant, requirement of what's needed to make them feel okay. And like I said, a lot of it just gets rooted down to how we treat mental health in this country, because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just ignorant and think that if we gave a little bit more of a shit, we could probably help a lot of these, or like at least fucking whittle down a lot of these problems. But in that same regard, if I was to if I was to try to like fix meth, for instance, how do you even tackle that? Is the problem, because one, I could round up everybody that's done meth, stick them in a fucking hole, which is unethical, and just be like, hey, we'll let you out in like 6 months when you're done detoxing and out of this. But then I didn't fix the lower part where, you know, the schizophrenics, the people who have other mental health issues that they're trying to like self-medicate, because I didn't give them the appropriate medication, the appropriate psych meds to help them on. One common thing that I do see is a lot of people who have like depression, PTSD, and anxiety, they start to use alcohol, heroin, other drugs, or opiates in general, stimulants or stuff to kind of make them feel a little bit better. Like, you know, you and I have talked about it extensively, and like psilocybin and mental health, especially like in veterans with PTSD. Is that a way to fix the problem? I don't know. Maybe get them on a regimen that's not doing methadone, Suboxone, or maybe not doing these other things, and then microdosing them on psilocybin afterwards. I don't know what the answer is, but I know that the answer involves something about addressing the overall or the overarching issue of handling the mental health of a nation overall, and, you know, kind of dealing with a lot of the situations that we see in the world, because people are just trying to feel good. You know, when a lot of times when you go out and drink with friends, you're like, oh, we're having a good night, man, we're fucking kicking this shit back. You know, recently a friend just came into town and we're like, fuck, we're just going to go out, you know, have fun, do this shit. We're enjoying the time. Life's fucking good. Everybody's happy. Right. But then you have those other people where their day in and day out consists of, I have to drink because I don't have any other coping mechanisms, or I don't have anything available to me to make me feel better. Like, I'm sure you can talk about it, but the introduction of like therapy into most people's lives is a beneficial thing. It's something that, after maybe not what is commonly used as like a traumatic incident, but something that definitely kind of did play a little bit more in your head than you thought it would have, and seeking therapy for that. But it's not readily available. It's not one of those things that is always something that somebody can get to help them. I know there's, I have had a pretty significant amount of like mental patients where they're on the streets fending for themselves, or they're in like boarding homes, and they know exactly where they want to go because they actively want to be in these situations. Like the state hospital, NMBHI. I've picked up so many people that are like, I want to go there. I know I have a problem. I know I have this. And an example is a schizophrenic that I had encountered recently. He's like, I want to go there. And they will say everything in the book. They'll be like, I'm suicidal, I'm this, I'm homicidal, I'm that, everything. They'll throw whatever they can at me so I can give the impression to the doctor that this is somebody who severely needs help. They need to go here. But the problem is one, a lot of mental institutions are full. They do have a lot of people. So then they end up having to get sent out of city, out of state to other issues. Like I think later on we ended up flying that dude to a different facility so he can seek help. But those facilities, because of how often people are coming through, they're just kind of medicating and turning away. And just, you know, we're putting a Band-Aid on an arterial bleed, right? We're not fixing the problem. We're just coating over it enough to where it's not an issue for at least the next month, or so on and so forth. I don't know how to fix that. I truly like have no ideas outside of like some really radical shit that maybe if I came off the top of my fucking head and everybody would shoot that down. Because truly, like, and this kind of leads into like the topic of like free healthcare in that same sense. To a degree, a lot of people who are on like Medicare, Medicaid, or even just don't have, like, the reason healthcare is like super expensive in the country is part of it has to do with what's called cost sharing. And so, like, let's say for example, somebody who's homeless, who's not on Medicare or Medicaid, goes to the hospital and they rack up a $10,000 bill. Well, the hospital can't put liens on their shit. They can't go after them for the money that they don't have. They really can't get that money back. So, in turn, they take that $10,000 and distribute it over the people who can pay. And so, like, the next 100 people that come in, they each have, an extra $100 tacked on to their shit. So, you rack up this $5,000 bill, well, now it's $5,100 because they're trying to make that money back up from what the previous bill was racked up on. And then it's such a thing where you don't have, like, for instance, a lot of my 911 calls are not to, like, I do work in a more poor community, but they're not to, like, the richer areas of the community. I very seldomly end up going to those areas. Usually because those people will transport themselves to the ER, or their insurance is good enough that they're, very well maintained, or they're living healthier lives, whatnot. So intrinsically, it's more of like a lower income issue that does lead to like the cost sharing overall. But if I broke my fucking leg tomorrow and, I don't have health insurance, I'd rack up a pretty fucking steady bill.
$52,000 for a collarbone.
Right, like they'd fucking take some money from me.
For those of you because David doesn't have his mic on right now. Long story short, broke collarbone skiing, and $52,000 without insurance. You have insurance, but if you were to have had to pay that out of pocket,
Like 12.
fuck.
And like most public hospitals do have like pretty good payment plans. I think there's even like a way, if you can do the system right, you can push it to where like your hospital bill is like very, very low. There's a lot of like paperwork and shit that you have to fill out on the back end.
Well, Evan, when he was going in and out of the hospital because of his surgeries and then like the repair and all that kind of stuff, his bill ended up racking up to $1 million. And he was collectively, over the span of 2 months, I think he was in the hospital for 6 days, 7, maybe 7 days. So, but to wrap up that point, because when people hear about, okay, this guy or this person is a meth head, heroin addict, junkie, whatever you want to call it, people kind of write that off like, oh, well, don't fucking do drugs, idiot. Obviously, don't fucking do drugs. And okay, it was like, yeah, no shit. Okay, no shit, don't do drugs. I maybe this is an optimistic idea, but I would say 90% of people won't just say, you know what, today's the day to do meth. Yeah, I'm just going to try meth and see what happens. I would say 90% of people aren't going to fucking do that, aren't going to have a thought in their head. And that's the point you brought up, is that most of the people that do have that thought in their heads, like, I'm going to try meth today, they're not in the right state of mind. They are either severely mentally ill and they're trying to self-medicate, or they've like you said, they've this mainly I think applies to the opiates, but they have this injury, pain never went away. The prescription works for maybe 5 years, 10 years, but it keeps getting chronic. They get older, so aches and pains get more prevalent, and then it's like, all right, well, I just went through my month prescription in 14 days. Yeah, I know how to get heroin. I know how to get meth. I know how to get oxys off the street. They get oxys off the street that are cut with fentanyl, and they're done. And I think it's sad. It's like it's if on paper it's an I think, but it's, if you look at it contextually, it's it can very quickly become an I know. I know that is probably the case for most people. And you bring up free healthcare. I have no idea how to fucking solve that either. I don't know how to implement that. But it's another symptom of the problem, where when you have a system that's based upon business, based upon money, how much money can we make out of this amount of people and keep them on? It's like the conspiracy, like, oh, they'll never cure cancer, because why would they cure cancer? That means that all these people that are taking treatments aren't going to be paying money anymore. And it's a very ugly thing. And it's, especially with everything that we've gone through with COVID, it's hard to not think that way. You know what I mean?
Well,
it's very hard to not think that we're like not getting exploited by the government and by big pharma and now the legacy media to stay on these medications. I was listening to RFK talk about it, and he was saying that the average American right now is on 4 medications. And when he said that, I was like, fuck, okay. They gave me 2 regular pain medicines for my surgery. They gave me the oxys to help me sleep finally, and then I'm on test. Or I'm going to get back on test. So yeah, that's 4. I'm a statistic. Fuck! Fuck!
Well, and like, so you have the more extreme option of like, how do we fix the system? And it's like, stop treating the sick, essentially, and go down to only like extreme life-saving care. But
no one's going for that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's horrible.
Step
away from that real
That's such
quick.
an extreme way to go about it, because
You're killing people.
yeah, essentially overnight you would, solve the system because you stop treating the alcoholics, the obese, the cancer patients, those chronically ill. But
you
at
kill
the
people.
same time, you're fucking actively killing people, because even though you're not helping maybe the alcoholic that comes in, because, and we've had these calls before where people are like, I just have nowhere to go and I'm hungry. And you look at them and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I have anxiety. And then they'll look you dead in the eyes and be like, I'm also suicidal. And you're like, get in the truck. Come on, let's go. Because they don't want to refuse. They want to go to the hospital. So they'll call 911, have you come pick them up. And as EMS, you can't just tell them like, fuck you. I don't want to take you.
Right.
Drive yourself. So you can't do that. So now you have to... you have to take these people in, and then the hospital's upset because they have to kind of treat, or to some degree get this patient to a point of discharge. They can't just like have them walk in and be like, fuck you, get out.
Right. And now again, in this very specific instance where they're feigning ailments that they don't have, they are potentially taking away a spot from someone who may need it. And they're also charging money, and we just talked about the dispersal aspect of it. No, I see the problem.
And so it's right now the system that we're in, and it's like, well, how do you fix it, right? So you have the extreme point that I mentioned earlier, where that doesn't solve anything.
Yeah.
Or for lack of a better word,
Well, it's not humane.
It's not humane. It would solve the problem, but it's not humane by any means. So then, like, part of that biomedical ethics class that I took was looking into different, like, health cares around the world. You have, I think it's Thailand, where if you're abusing the system in a sense where, like, you're going, like, almost to the hospital every day, like, let's say you're a hypochondriac, at some point the hospitals do turn you down. Like, you've been taking too much, you come in with no problems.
It's the boy that cried wolf.
Yeah, get the fuck out. And then next month, they're like, you can come back in for your, 17 visits or whatever the case may be.
You've had too many punches on your subway card, kid. Come back next month.
Yeah, and then, but also part of that is they have, like, physical fitness dependent on your age. Like, it's like Tai Chi for, like, the elderly, gym memberships for younger ages, active, like, programs outside for kids and whatnot, stuff like that to take care. But that's like a full, like, social program. In the sense of, like, too many hospital visits in a month for, X condition that's non-emergent. Like, you're like, oh, I got this knee pain that you guys gave me Toradol for last time, and it really helped.
Yeah.
Toradol's an NSAID. It's not non-addictive, but let's say that's the case that they're constantly coming in for, they'd get turned down. Maybe that would help the situation a little more. I can say I don't bring anybody enough in 1 month to justify.
Yeah, it sounds like a Band-Aid solution.
Yeah.
And any time that you're denying care, that's never going to get anywhere.
Yeah, and, like, I think it's Germany. Germany has a really good program that I think is better. It's a fixed rate for all insurances. So, like, let's say, for instance, like in America, you have
Can you find that if they actually do that over in Germany?
you have like Aflac, Blue Cross, all a Presbyterian Health Plan, all that shit, and they have like a cut rate that all insurances can charge. So let's say it's $150, right? And I think it was like a $20 or €20 copay for them, whatever they use. Marks.
The thing that's very closely eclipsing the dollar. Yeah.
But it
Look up fixed rate insurance Germany.
so in Germany they have like a fixed rate for insurances. So you have all these different insurance plans that are basically competing for what they can offer you for $150. They're fighting to say like we can give you this care, that care, this, all of that, all of this big bad bundle for $150, where this other company, like, to save money is $150, and but they offer you less, and they drop like a big binder in front of you.
You finish your thought.
They drop a big binder in front of you, and then you can kind of like go through like a catalog system and pick it out. And it's based off of income overall.
Yeah, here we go. Yeah. So if you earn less than, is that euros?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you earn less than 66,000 euros a year, you can only enroll in public statutory health insurance scheme. If you earn less than 66,000 a year, but you're a freelancer, you can opt out of statutory insurance and get private insurance instead. If you earn more than 66,000, you can either stay on public or switch to private.
So one of the things as far as like...
Oh, okay. So does Germany have universal health care? Yes. All German citizens and legal residents are required by law to have health insurance. Everyone, regardless of their income, has health coverage and access to affordable medical care. So you pay monthly contributions for the healthcare system. So it's not technically free. It's more just, it's better. It sounds like it's kind of better distributed than ours is.
It's a little bit better, or a lot bit better.
Yeah, and then so this is what we'll close out on. What does health insurance in Germany cover? 10 euros per quarter for a doctor visit. First 10 euros of prescription medication. Approximately 10 euros a day for hospital stay for maximum 28 days a year. That's not a lot. Full price of prescription vision aids such as glasses or contacts. Well, that would be fucking nice, so I could get a good set of glasses of these pieces of shit that I got from Optical Vision for $20.
But, and like, you know, their system allows for, you can opt straight into private and not be on that, or not on the public system itself. And the easiest thing that I can think of in this country is, you know, Medicare and Medicaid. So we already get taxed every fucking paycheck for Medicare and Medicaid for those that, you know, can't afford their health insurance, and they get put on that because they make X amount of money that's way below, you know, the poverty line. I think on that end, like, let's say, because I make way too much money to get put on Medicare and Medicaid by their definition. But let's say they take in, you know, some nerd behind a desk fucking punches in some numbers, and, you know, based on what I pay into taxes a month, I'm given a, like, access. So let's say in total, my health insurance bill for the month would be $200. But because I paid into Medicare and Medicaid this month, $70, I only have to pay $130 out of pocket to opt into that care. I feel like that would allow more Americans to opt into that pretty much like government care that they're requesting. And hopefully, by the way that the market works, it would create that supply and demand where, you know, Presbyterian, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and all of these other insurances,
in theory, they lower their stuff.
In theory, lower their rates and then allow for more of that competitive market. Maybe not by creating that, like, fixed, you can only charge this much, but using capitalism as it fucking works to drive the market down to a point where, you know, maybe I don't want Medicare and Medicaid, and, you know, maybe it costs me, because I think I looked at press plans and they were like $400 a month for me or some shit, and I was like, eat a dick. And I'd much rather just, you know, deal with a broken leg. Fuck off. But drive it down to the point where, maybe press is like, hey, this is $200 a month. So yeah, I'm, paying $70 into Medicare and Medicaid, but because that price got driven down, I'm more willing to spend $200 a month on a private health insurance because, $30 extra or whatever the case may be on top, or $70 extra than what I would pay with Medicare and Medicaid, but I get a better bundle out of it, or whatever the reason may be. I feel like that might be the more
lucrative idea.
Yeah, especially because healthcare should not cost what it does, man.
No, yeah.
But yeah, healthcare is like a very convoluted issue that, especially depending on who you talk to, it's either a lot of people are very hot and cold on it. They'll bring up, you'll have the more conservative side that'll bring up areas like Switzerland, where they talk about how shitty their healthcare is as far as like the public care system, or like even Canadians, right? They'll bring up like the, hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands, I don't know how many, that come down to the US to get, these elective surgeries or to get a lot of their healthcare, because here it's on demand. I need to go get a colonoscopy. I can schedule it within X amount of time, like a couple weeks, a month, 2 months, whatever, to come in and get my shit checked. Whereas like up there, I've heard where people are like pressed out 9 months for an issue that could, potentially be
killing them.
Yeah. Fucking them up. Maybe they don't have actually that 9 months. Maybe they get to that 9 month mark and they're like, oh, you have 3 months. If we could have started chemo earlier.
Yeah.
And so it's an issue where, if you talk to the one side of it, they're like, oh, no, fuck it. It's got to stay to the free market. But then you talk to the other and they're like, it's got to be free 100%. But they see it from their standpoint of how often prior to your surgery did you go to the hospital?
Hardly ever.
Yeah, same. I haven't been to a fucking ER since I thought I had appendicitis. And that was like almost 6 years ago.
Right.
It's very seldom. The free healthcare system benefits the super sick, and it looks really good for the super healthy because we don't have to use the system a whole lot until we get older, or until we develop a condition that requires it. But at the same time, it's very taxing on the system, especially now when we have a labor shortage, because you look at how much money we spent in the Ukraine, and if all that money was dumped into healthcare alone, yeah, free healthcare is a very feasible idea. I'll give you that 100%. It's completely feasible.
This is where we'll end this. Can you look up the total amount of money we've spent on Ukraine? That's a whole other conversation we can get into later. But I just want to know how much money we've spent on this fucking Ukraine conflict, because it's reaching. Is it in the trillions?
I'm pretty sure.
It's close to $1 trillion.
I mean, we just found $6 billion that we didn't spend, so we're like,
right.
Hey, we said we gave it to you. Here it goes.
Oh my god. Have I spent on League?
On Valorant, Roblox, and Fortnite. Holy shit. Genshin Impact. Holy fuck, dude.
Oh my god.
People got to stop.
There we go,
spending
right
money
there.
on
Top
video
one.
games.
That was the last conflict.
$2 trillion in Iraq, or $8 trillion over 20 years.
Okay, so go to that, not the RFK one. Yeah, that first link right there. Okay, so how much has the U.S. spent?
As of May in 2023.
Yeah, so go down. Directed more than $75 billion in assistance to Ukraine, which includes humanitarian, financial, military support, according to the Kiel Institute of World Economy, the German Research Institute. Go down. See if there's anything more on that. Okay, so we'll go through this and we'll end it. So go up. So we've spent 3.9 in humanitarian aid, 26.4 in financial aid, 18.3 in security. So the total military accumulates to $46.6 billion. And we just found another six. So yeah, oh my! So we spent a little over $80 billion. Well, this has been a fun podcast. No, so this is always fun, dude, and it's always fun. And we didn't even get to the actual fun raunchy shit, but
I know. I was so excited to talk about the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire,
who had a dwarf fetish.
Yeah,
we'll start that. Then we'll start the next one with that.
Well, you're booked out so fucking far, so everybody's gonna have to wait for me to talk. I'm gonna forget.
Yeah, but see, that's booked out for people who have to show up, dude. You live here. We can just roll up and do one. I'm booked. So everyone watching this, people that watch that wonder why have I not gotten booked yet? I'm booked out till October, and I feel like a dickhead telling you, hey, do you want to come on October 13th when it's the end of June? I feel like a dickhead saying that. Because if I was on the receiving end of that, I'm like, oh, well, he doesn't fucking want me. He's just going to push it out way far, and then when it comes, he's going to cancel. Because, no, but I'm also booked out twice a week until October. So I'm getting to people
on top of a full-time job.
On top of a full-time job, and yes. So, but no, this has been probably the most informative one we've done.
Cool, because I don't know what I'm talking about.
Which has been very fun, honestly. I like learning this kind of shit because I have no desire to ever touch medical anything. So I just go to you when I have issues. This has been a lot of fun. We'll be back on Monday, I think. I was looking at the schedule. And thank you guys for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.